The concerns and anxieties of the villagers were brought to the attention of the village chief regarding a mysterious group that had been breaking into homes, only to vanish without a trace when the victims woke up. Despite the reports, the village chief decided against involving the police, deeming the matter not credible enough. Some claimed it was the work of the oily man, a supernatural being covered in a slick black substance known for abducting women under the cover of night. This elusive creature was said to possess the ability to scale walls and snatch its victims while remaining uncatchable due to its oily exterior. Legend had it that all oily men were once human males transformed into demonic entities, typically resembling average adult men in height and weight. Their eyes were said to come in various colors, from yellow and gold to red and pitch black. Women who had encountered this entity recounted how it would appear near their beds before vanishing behind locked windows, leaving behind a sense of dread and mystery. The village chief had instructed a group of young men to patrol the village at night in order to catch the intruders who had been causing trouble. However, despite their efforts, the intruders continued to pose a threat even after 10 days of patrolling. One night, a man managed to sneak into Andre's house and help himself to some food and drink in Andre's house before settling down to sleep next to Andre's wife. Although he had removed her clothes, he did not harm her in any way. When Andre's wife woke up around 11 p.m., she realized that her clothes were missing and saw the man lying next to her. In the dim light of the lamp, she couldn't see his face clearly and let out a scream. Hearing her scream, Andre rushed to her side to protect her. The man wasted no time and swiftly made his escape. He calmly walked towards the window and effortlessly jumped out, disappearing behind the curtains. It was puzzling because the window was locked from the inside. Andre's wife, unable to get up and chase after the man, wrapped herself in a sheet from the mattress to cover her body. She later admitted that the man had not assaulted her. Surprisingly, other women in the village, who had also been targeted, claimed that the man had only undressed them and fled when they woke up. The village chief felt a deep sense of dissatisfaction as he pondered the disaster that had struck his community. He knew that reporting it to the authorities would be futile, as there was no concrete evidence to support his claims. Moreover, he feared being reprimanded by the district head for causing unnecessary trouble. Shaman Rodney, upon hearing Andre's account of his home invasion, attributed the incident to the pursuit of dark, mystical knowledge. He callously remarked that following the devil's instructions was the root cause of such actions. Andre, visibly upset, expressed his desire to retaliate against the intruder, clenching his fists in anger. Despite his anger, Andre was relieved that his wife remained unharmed during the intrusion. However, he was deeply disturbed by the audacity of the man who dared to sleep beside his spouse. Determined to confront the intruder, Andre sought advice from Shaman Rodney on how to combat such threats. The shaman cautioned him against giving in to anger, as it would only serve to weaken him in the face of dark forces. Elvina's husband lay fast asleep beside her, completely unaware of the man who had slipped into their room. The stranger calmly undressed Elvina and settled down next to her, causing Elvina's husband to stir only slightly. It wasn't until Elvina's scream pierced the air that her husband finally awoke, but by then, the intruder had already vanished out the window. Despite the commotion, the window remained securely locked from the inside, leaving everyone puzzled. Elvina's husband seems almost entranced, as if under a spell, Andre remarked, his frustration evident. Shaman Rodney nodded in agreement. He's delving into his mystical practices, perhaps a bit too deeply, he mused. The villagers gathered at the coffee shop, sharing their concerns about the recent break-ins. It's becoming unbearable. We can't even sleep peacefully anymore, one villager lamented, clenching his fists in anger. Andre recounted how their own home had been targeted during a night patrol, adding to the growing unease among the villagers. The women in the village, once fearless, now hesitated even to do their daily chores, fearing the unknown intruder. The incident involving the trespassing man was not limited to just one village. It occurred in several nearby villages as well. However, the truth behind these allegations remains uncertain, as no one has reported the incidents to the police. One villager suggested reporting the matter to the authorities, but Andrei quickly intervened, stating that the village chief had advised against it. The dissatisfied villagers grumbled, expressing their frustration with the village head's reluctance to file a complaint. On the other hand, half of the villagers agreed with the village chief, believing that involving the police would lead to the arrest and questioning of innocent individuals while allowing the guilty party to escape. They argued that it would be better to exercise patience and catch the culprits themselves. The other villagers scornfully questioned whether they should wait until someone is raped before taking action. Andrei, however, pointed out that nothing had happened yet, and that similar incident had occurred in other villages, only to be hushed up by the villagers until the disturbances eventually vanished. He mentioned that Shaman Rodney had claimed that those who engaged in such acts were testing their knowledge of black magic. Once they had mastered their skills, they would cease their actions. Andrei added that this was a part of the occult knowledge that attracted individuals who sought spiritual enlightenment without adhering to religious teachings. He recounted his conversation with Shaman Rodney in the latter's hut, where the shaman had shared these insights. The villagers were in a state of panic after the disaster struck, and it was during this chaotic time that Andrei and the village chief stumbled upon Shaman Rodney. Surprisingly, the shaman was not performing his usual spiritual rituals, but rather, he was engrossed in constructing a house. It was then that Andrei accidentally stepped on a nail, causing his foot to swell and rendering him unable to walk. Sensing Andrei's distress, Shaman Rodney swiftly prepared a concoction of coconut oil infused with nails and uttered a prayer over it. He instructed Andrei to apply the oil to the wounded area. Miraculously, once the oil was applied, Andrei found himself able to walk again, and the pain from the nail puncture diminished. Astonished by this remarkable healing, Andrei became a frequent visitor to Shaman Rodney, seeking his assistance whenever he fell ill or required the old man's prayers. The village leader, impressed by Andrei's progress, agreed to meet with Shaman Rodney. During their meeting, the village chief also consented to the shaman's condition of keeping his assistance a secret from the rest of the villagers. Shaman Rodney had already deduced that the chaos in the village was a result of people attempting to replicate his practices. Although he had not committed any crimes thus far, the situation deeply concerned him and the villagers. Shaman Rodney was well aware that his practices should never violate the dignity of his patients. He simply required the person seeking his help to undress and lie beside him until they woke up, and if successful, it meant his practice had been completely effective. Shaman Rodney was no stranger to the practice, having dabbled in it before but refrained due to religious beliefs. He firmly believed that such mystical knowledge was tainted by evil intentions, a sentiment he expressed with regret towards the man's actions. Despite this, Shaman Rodney could sense the man's advantage, his ability to infiltrate spaces with ease, bypassing conventional entry points like windows and doors. The man's uncanny ability to slip through the smallest crevices in walls did not escape Shaman Rodney's notice. While acknowledging the man's formidable skills, the shaman also emphasized that every dark mystical power had its vulnerabilities. He cryptically hinted at the need to identify and exploit these weaknesses, without divulging specifics on where to begin the search. Despite the potential threat posed by the man's powers, Shaman Rodney's own abode remained untouched by any disturbances. Even during times of heightened vigilance due to village rumors of thefts, his house stood inviolate. The villagers' suspicions towards the shaman only served to reinforce the protective shield around his home, prompting him to enlist the village chief and Andrei for night watch duties, while the rest were advised to secure their own residences. The first evening the trio stood watch, there was no indication of the intruder's presence. The village chief and Andrei accompanied Shaman Rodney as he patrolled the village, keeping a close eye on the entrance. By midnight, Shaman Rodney concluded that all was clear and signaled for his companions to return. Despite 3 consecutive nights of vigilance, there were no signs of the anticipated trespasser. Throughout this time, the villagers remained undisturbed by any unwelcome visitors. "I suppose he's aware of our surveillance," Andrei murmured. "Possibly, Shaman Rodney agreed, acknowledging the cunning nature of such individuals. They have their own strategies. If they sense any risk, they won't proceed. They'll bide their time until the villagers let their guard down. The village chief expressed concern about the looming threat to their community. We must act swiftly to prevent any disruption, he urged, hopeful that a solution could be found. Deep in thought, Shaman Rodney nibbled on his thumb, contemplating a plan of action. Let's bring him to your residence, Andre, he suggested with a mischievous grin, hinting at a scheme forming in his mind. Initially, Andre felt a sense of unease when Shaman Rodney made his request. Little did he know that the man possessed even greater power than he did. Andre couldn't help but wonder what kind of tricks the intruder had up their sleeves to escape. However, driven by his curiosity to uncover the fate of the intruder, he reluctantly agreed to follow Shaman Rodney's lead. The trio embarked on their journey towards Andre's house, with Shaman Rodney taking the lead. At the intersection, Shaman Rodney forcefully stomped his heel on the ground 3 times before they continued on their way. Upon reaching Andre's house, instead of waking his wife, Shaman Rodney instructed Andre to quietly position himself beneath the house, opposite to where his wife was sleeping. Meanwhile, the village chief settled himself comfortably on the porch. Andre observed Shaman Rodney circling his house, repeatedly rubbing a stick on the ground 3 times. Neither Andre nor the village chief had any idea what he was up to. Eventually, Shaman Rodney entered the basement of the kitchen, cautioning his 2 companions to remain still unless he signaled them otherwise. For about an hour, the 3 of them crouched beneath the house, their anticipation growing. Suddenly, Andre's ears caught the sound of someone clearing their throat. Initially, he assumed it was Shaman Rodney, and the village chief believed it was Andre who had made the noise, causing him to grow angry at the violation of Shaman Rodney's orders. However, it became evident that the throat-clearing sounds were coming from a distance outside the house. Gradually, the sounds grew louder as they approached the vicinity of the home. Then, Andre heard the distinct noise of sand being scattered on the roof of the house, 3 times in succession. Yet, to his bewilderment, he had not witnessed anyone carrying out such an action. Nevertheless, he abides by Shaman Rodney's cautionary advice to remain silent if he hears or sees anything peculiar. Glancing towards the porch's edge, the village chief raised his hand and pressed his index finger to his lips, signaling for him to be quiet. Even when peering down from the kitchen window, Shaman Rodney also emphasized the need for silence. It was at that moment that Andre felt a wave of relief wash over him, as he was confident that the intruder would not be able to infiltrate his home once more. After a few minutes, the sound of sand being tossed onto the roof ceased, and the man once again cleared their throats 3 times. It was then that Andre noticed a man strolling around his property, precisely in the area that Shaman Rodney had previously marked. The man sported black pants and a dark blue tank top, his eyes scanning the surroundings as if in search of something. He aimlessly wandered around the house, yet never strayed from the spot where Shaman Rodney had made his markings. Only after that did Shaman Rodney crawl towards Andre, and together they sought refuge beneath the porch. "Leave it be. There's nowhere for him to escape," whispered Shaman Rodney, retrieving a cigarette from his pocket. He nonchalantly smoked, seemingly unconcerned about the men lingering in the yard. "Allow me to teach him a lesson, Shaman Rodney," Andre muttered resentfully. "You've forgotten, Andre," Shaman Rodney reminded him. "It's true that you can't wait, can you?" scolded the village chief, causing Andre to fall silent. Undeniably, his desire for revenge still burned within him, for the man had slept beside his wife, challenging Andre's masculinity even if he hadn't committed the act of rape. If Andre's memory failed him and he forgot about his promise to Shaman Rodney, he would struggle to remain patient. However, he understood the importance of keeping his word, as the problem they faced affected not only him, but also the entire village. In moments like these, Andre had to suppress the vengeful feelings that lingered in his heart. Together they shared a cigarette, provided by Shaman Rodney, paying no attention to the man lurking around their house. It was as if nothing had occurred. Andre leaned against the pole joint and eventually dozed off until morning. He anxiously awaited Shaman Rodney's next move. As dawn broke, the 3 of them emerged from beneath the house. Andre woke up his wife to prevent her from being startled. In a hushed voice, Andre informed her about the man who had been loitering around their home. "It's really him," Andre's wife whispered when she caught sight of the man through the window. "All right, start boiling water. Prepare a strong cup of coffee for him later." That's what Shaman Rodney instructed. He instructed his wife. Without objection, she promptly went to the kitchen to boil water as her husband had directed. Ultimately, it would be the village chief who would decide the fate of this man who had fallen into their trap. However, from the expression on the man's face, Andre's wife failed to recognize him. It became apparent that he was not a villager after all. Shaman Rodney perched himself at the edge of the steps, his legs swaying freely. As the man approached the front yard, Shaman Rodney struck his knees with clenched fists. Abruptly, the man halted and turned to face Shaman Rodney, who sat confidently at the front of the stairs. "Hey, where do you think you're headed?" Shaman Rodney inquired, his gaze fixed on the man, who appeared to be in his mid-20s. "I'm trying to find a way out, but there's a stone wall surrounding everything. I can't locate the door," the man replied weakly. Curiosity piqued, Shaman Rodney pressed further. "Who are you and where do you come from?" Meanwhile, the village chief and Andre trailed closely behind him, while Andre's wife watched the unfolding scene from the window, her eyes filled with astonishment. "My name is Morpheus, and I come from a different state," he responded fearfully. Shaman Rodney, with a hint of mockery in his voice, retorted, "You've come a long way, haven't you?" The young man fell silent, his gaze meeting Shaman Rodney's as he sat on the doorstep, his palms pressed against his knees. "Please, I beg for forgiveness. Let me go," he pleaded, trembling and seeking protection. "First, come up here," Shaman Rodney instructed, gesturing for him to ascend. Without objection, the man made his way straight into the house. Shaman Rodney then requested Andre's wife to bring them some coffee, and the four of them sat together, sipping the warm brew. After a thorough interrogation by the village chief, Morpheus confessed to the act, claiming that his teacher had instructed him to perform it for precisely 44 nights in order to attain black magic powers. "We won't let you harm this village again," declared Shaman Rodney firmly. Morpheus, understanding the gravity of the situation, simply nodded in agreement. As he glanced around the courtyard, he noticed that there was no stone wall in sight, contrary to what he had claimed earlier. It dawned on him that the dark magic he had boasted about could be overcome after all. "The power of evil can be conquered because it has its limitations," Shaman Rodney remarked, emphasizing the importance of divine knowledge. "But the wisdom of God is beyond defeat, even by the devil himself." With these words, he instructed Morpheus to return to his village peacefully, ensuring that Andre wouldn't seek revenge. From that day on, the village remained undisturbed. Indeed, it is the condition of the captive thus cannot be harmed, but instead given food and a small amount of money as alms. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Your engagement means a lot to us as we strive to help our small channel grow. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with our latest content.